Friday night, what's happening in Israel? Friday night, we find out that Hamas has been sneaking through the border into Israel. Plants have been sneaking across or being allowed into Israel. And Saturday morning, you have a bunch of people who've crossed the border, plants, who release havoc and absolutely do unthinkable things in Israel to the that is horrific to describe what's happening there. And then to realize that right now in Utah, the state that should be redder than red, we are a sanctuary state. We are allowing, and not only allowing these people in here, but then we are releasing 67% of the people ICE captures, including right out of their own words, people who could potentially be MS-13 gang members. Yeah. We're releasing them back onto the streets. Are we not setting ourselves up for exactly what Israel dealt with?
Trojan horse. Mayor, leading into what Jason's talking about, the simple fact that we have these military-age fighting men. I've seen all kinds of reports and reporters down there at the border talking to all these border agents, bringing people across. These aren't Spanish guys. They're coming from Syria. They're coming from Senegal. They're coming from all over East Africa. And a lot of them have said, and then they say, where are you going? Florida, Texas, Utah. A lot of them said Utah. And so we've got all these people now.
You?
Dominicano.
¿A dónde vas?
Georgia.
Gracias. ¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde vas?
Nueva Jersey.
¿Y usted?
Utah.
¿A dónde?
De Utah.
¿De dónde?
¿De dónde? De Ecuador.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde?
Utah.
Gracias. ¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde?
Utah.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador, Nueva York.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador. Nueva Jersey.
¿Y usted?
De Ecuador a Texas.
¿Y usted?
Cubano.
¿A dónde? ¿A qué estado?
Boom. All of a sudden, all these people coming across the border saying they're coming to Utah.
Well, it's, again, Utah has an easy policy like California does and others. And that's why, and this is a state that they're not looking at, no one's looking into. And again, the corruption in Utah runs deep.
And that was part of the conversation I had with the ICE field director. He said that very thing. He said that the intel they've got on the ground and is that Utah, go to Utah. They're very friendly, and it's because they're not going to deport you. They don't have any policies in place that are cooperating with ICE for these long-term detentions, and so go to Utah.
And welcome to We Are the People Radio. This is your host, Jason Preston. And today, good to have the man, the myth, and the legend, Tom Hazelden, with me in place of Alexia.
It's always good to be here. I know I'm second place to that, and as I should be.
Well, we're glad to have you. Tom's been with us on, Tom's a regular with us, and we appreciate him because if there's one of the things I respect about Tom is Tom's not afraid to stand up and call people out, call out corruption. And there's a lot of corruption we're finding in Utah. It needs to be called out. So grateful to have you with us, Tom. And we got a pretty cool episode today. This has been a huge issue that's kind of blowing up over the weekend, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. You know, today's episode features the one and only, the mayor of Riverton, Utah, one of my favorite cities in the state, Trent Stags, who is running officially for the Senate seat of Romney.
Yeah.
And Staggs is a true conservative, not one of these phony guys out there that says they are. And we're going to talk about that a little more, but we really like what Trent is standing for, and I think you guys are going to enjoy the show. So,
you know, I'll tell you, Trent, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here again.
We're very excited to have you running. And, I hope our listeners, look, when Mitt Romney stepped down, they did not have him step down without a plan. And they have someone who is basically Mitt 2.0 running in his place. And if we're going to beat Mitt 2.0, who is Brad Wilson, Speaker of the House, he's on Envision Utah. I mean, we're going to get into who he is. If we are going to beat him, it is going to take everybody who is anti-establishment, any true conservative, to rally behind Trent. Because I'll tell you what their strategy is. Every time we have someone try to take on the establishment, it just chaps my hide, because there's their number one strategy is flood the field with conservatives, get the conservatives to water themselves down over several different candidates, and then you get all the rhinos and all the people who are really checked out, who are just going to vote where the money is, where the big name is. They'll support the establishment candidate, and then the one chance we had, we don't get them out because we're flooding the field. So, I really hope that we can lead into this race with you versus Brad Wilson. And to any conservatives out there, why in the world would you try to get in the race and take Trent down when he has every major endorsement? And we're going to get into that in a minute. Because look, you've gotten in the race, yeah. You got in early. You're conservative. Your track record is conservative. You've been on there all the right things. What we're going to be talking about today, with you going after discovering that Utah has been a sanctuary state, is huge. Right. And I'll tell you, you've been winning my support, and so I'm thankful to have him on here.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, good to be on, and I'm in good company here, it sounds like. Then people that are bold and willing to act, that's typified my career, and also the 10 years that I've been in elected office. And like you said, I got into this race when Romney was still there. I was the only one bold enough to take on Mitt and the establishment. And you're absolutely right that the establishment has a successor all lined up.
Yep.
They want to put money behind. Brad Wilson's already raised $3 million. He's got the who's who of the establishment there behind him, and we got to make sure that doesn't happen.
And it seems most of Mitt's donors are going boom right to Brad Wilson.
Yeah, that was what it looks like when you look at the filings and the fundraise events and everything else that's going on.
That's my understanding, is that a lot of the donors have donated heavily right up front, and their maximum to Brad Wilson here. And you're right. Why, if you're a conservative in this race, if you want to jump in, why would you split that vote and let someone that's not a true conservative take over?
And that's what they do. And that's why we've got to stop that. This episode is brought to us by Silverhawk Enterprises, and I just want to give a shout out to you, Tom. Thank you for your support. Thank you for fighting with us. And make sure you're following us on our social medias, especially get on Rumble if you're not there, because YouTube does continue to try to take things down, especially after some of our last stuff we did, which is exposing some of the ritualistic stuff, which is rightfully heavy, and I don't actually would understand them taking that down, because it is very heavy stuff. So make sure you're following this on We Are the People UT on all of our other channels except for YouTube. So with that getting out of the way, let's freaking rock and roll.
Let's do this.
All right. So Tom, what do we got here? What do we want to hear from? I kind of just want to hear. I want to hear your story. Like, how did all because you kind of gone. It has been all the news in Utah over the weekend.
Well, what do you got? Let me lead off with a question.
Yeah.
Here's one of the things I've liked about Trent. I've known him a long time, but one of the things I like about him is that even during COVID, he was the guy to stand up. He's the guy to stand up against child pornography in our schools, the books that are out of line, to these different districts, and showing up in place of where we don't have as much of a voice, where he's got a big platform.
Yep.
But the thing that's been interesting is this last week with ICE, border enforcement, sanctuary states, things like that. Well, this guy Trent, he hit it head on. And so the question I have is this: how did Utah become a sanctuary state, and how is it that Utah is left of ICE?
Yeah,
because you're the only one that's actually doing something right now.
Yeah, I tell you, it was shocking to me. So the story, and this just came out. I had a meeting last Tuesday, so October 3rd, with the field office director of ICE. And ICE, the Salt Lake City field office encompasses Montana, Idaho, Utah, Nevada, so those 4 states. He had been reaching out to me multiple times, wanting to get a meeting. And the emails, I have these.
And what's his name?
Mike Bernanke is the field office director. And he had made several attempts to reach out to me. And he said, look, I want to talk to you. I'm trying to get a hold of anybody that will listen of the seriousness of the issue that we have with respect to illegal immigration enforcement in the state of Utah. And it's got significant impacts to you and your community of Riverton. We've got a lot of new, regional shopping centers. There's been a lot of theft. And reportedly, it's these, criminal theft rings that are largely comprised of foreign nationals or, illegal immigrants. So I said, yeah, sure, let's meet. I got the ICE director wanting to meet with me. So I went ahead and did that in my capacity as a mayor. And during the meeting, he had emailed some information to me prior to, and I invited my communications director and my police chief to attend the meeting. And so we sat down for a good hour and a half And he had printed copies of this material, and he said, hey, look, I've designated Utah as a sanctuary state as of May 31st of this year.
Wow.
Because of the lack of enforcement. And so to kind of simplify the issue, what is happening is ICE will arrest immigrants, illegal immigrants. Not everybody. I mean, the perception is we're going on job sites and pulling off illegal immigrants. Look, guys, they don't have the time for that. They have the same head count they've had for years, with 3 to 4 times the amount of people coming across the border. And he defined the issue. 10,000 people a day at the southern border. And now across the border of Vermont, there's about 1,500 people a day, an 800% increase across the northern border. So we've been invaded. He said 5.5 million that we know of, about 1.5 million gotaways. So there's 7 million people just in the Biden administration that's come through our porous borders. And that's over twice the population of the state of Utah.
Jeez.
I mean, people need to understand the context of this.
It's an invasion.
It really is. And so those numbers aside, what I was interested in were the numbers in Utah. And he said, we've got over 100,000 active cases that we're working right now. And he put in this memo that designated Utah as a sanctuary state, that just in a 6-month period, for example, they had arrested about 4,000 people. And so these people are arrested and they want to be detained in a local detention center, usually a county jail, right, that they'll have an agreement with, if they have an agreement with them. And they don't have any long-term agreements in Utah because, and he admitted, ICE is very difficult to work with. They've got 16 different agencies that can come in and audit at a moment's notice, so I understand the concerns on the part of local sheriffs. But just the sheer number of these people that are being arrested, that aren't detained long-term, that go back out into the general population and then commit crimes. A big percentage of them do. And the stat that just floored me was when he said, Trent, there are 1 to 2 sexual assaults a day being committed by illegal immigrants in the state of Utah.
In Utah.
In Utah. Every day, 1 to 2 are being released. And these are the ones we know about because they've actually done time. So once served, then ICE is called to pick them up and deport them. And I was just blown away by these numbers and the criminality and the theft. And so I said, have you talked to the governor? Have you talked to Governor Cox? He said, yes, I have. I said, well, what did he say? And he said, well, we want to be considered, viewed as a welcoming state.
That's what Governor Cox said.
That's what I'm told was said, that they just want to be viewed as a welcoming state. And I thought, wow. And so knowing all this, it weighed on me for about 2 days. And I said, back to your point, Tom, I've got a platform, right? He came and met with me in my capacity as a mayor and highlighted all these issues that we have that impact my community and the rest of the state. And that last point about the sexual assaults, I couldn't be silent anymore. I said, you know what? I'm putting out a statement because we need change. We've got to have something happen. We've got to have the state step up and offer solutions like other states have done, like Texas and Florida and other red states. They have stood up, my understanding is, and helped provide additional monetary support, shield counties and county jails and local authorities from litigation. And so why can't our state do that? And so it was with that intent that I put out a statement and said, hey, I called on specifically Governor Cox, President Adams, the Senate president, and also the Speaker, Brad Wilson, and said, I'm imploring you guys to do something.
Right.
As a mayor, I really can't do much other than use my platform, make people aware of this issue. But we need at this point, because of the utter failing, it is the utter failing of the federal government. I mean, make no question about it. This is a federal issue, a complete failure. But the state has to act as a backstop.
No, we have our the state is a sovereign entity. It has to protect its citizens as well.
Number one duty of government. And so for us to just say, well, this is a federal issue, we got to put our head in the sand.
Yeah, this federal issue. We could, if they're going to keep the borders open, what we're not going to do anything if all the illegals come into our state. We're going to. It's not our fault. They're coming in here.
So the only detention option that ICE has in the state of Utah is in Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake County Jail, and they only allow a 72-hour hold. And so
compared to what? compared to what's going on in other states. Like why are they so upset about what's happening in Utah? Help our listeners understand why they're putting up a fuss here versus other states.
Well, it's about a 700-page agreement that the federal government asked to be signed by these local, jails and sheriffs. Onerous requirements. I mean, it's ridiculous. The number of agencies that can come in and audit. They request, that ICE detainees have their own barbershop and soaps and everything. I mean, it's just insane, right? Congress needs to take action there. That's one thing I want to do immediately is lower that hurdle so that more local jails and detention centers can work to detain ICE captures, like individuals that are being captured by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Because if an illegal immigrant, whether they're a citizen here or a legal immigrant, if you commit a crime and you're convicted, you go do time, right? So even if you're illegal, you're considered then part of the general jail population, and these onerous rules don't apply. The detainees that ICE, in that memo, my understanding is that ICE has said, look, they may not have committed a crime yet in America to the level at which they would be in jail, but these are people, it says right on ICE's website, that they're concerned or deemed a safety risk or a flight risk, and they may have intel that these are gang members from other countries or that they've committed crimes in other countries, not yet here. We want them detained. And so it's just the serious individuals. It's not every illegal immigrant that they're going after. They just don't have the manpower and the resources for that. But it's those people that they have questions about. And what used to happen in the Utah County Jail, they maintained or held 400 beds they made available to detain folks. And they would end up then working through the system and immigration attorneys and determine whether or not this person should be in the U.S., whether they should be granted an asylum claim. And he said only about 14% of all the cases are actually granted asylum. The rest end up being deported. And so what used to take 2 to 3 months when ICE had these beds available to detain people long-term and get them through the court system is now taking 2 to 3 years or longer because they're let out and they try to get them back into courts, and of course people don't show up. And so in 2 to 3 years, they're laying down roots, I'm told, and it just becomes a mess, a big mess. So again, my appeal was through the statement, hey, state of Utah, let's take some action.
Right.
Let's help out our county sheriffs and county jails, find a way to get something done and work through these onerous requirements of ICE, because at the end of the day, we need to, as a state, we need to protect the public. Public safety is number one role of government, and we've got to do it. And other states are doing this, and so we can't. The statement that was released last Friday from Governor Cox's office was that we can't be a backstop for the federal government, and we shouldn't have to, but there again, we absolutely need to be a backstop.
Yeah, we need to protect our state. I find it interesting because according to this document, here's what they said. Despite outreach by the offices of Senators Mitt Romney, Mike Lee, along with Congressman Stewart, Owens, Moore, and John Curtis, to local major county sheriffs, these offices have been unable to influence the sheriffs to provide bed space. So all of our representatives know about this. Apparently they've reached out to all of our reps. But I really respect you because you're the one who actually put up the red flags. Yep. To all these other reps knew about this, but you're the one who called it out. So I appreciate you calling it out, and I'm surprised that these sheriffs have been unwilling to do that. So you called out Cox over the weekend. What happened?
Yeah.
Because it kind of seemed like it didn't. I mean, you just did the right thing. Like you got this ICE officer saying, "Look, Utah's basically acting like a sanctuary state. They're not cooperating. They're released. It's forcing us to release these illegals back into your state." And he does say that you've got MS-13 gang members.
Yeah, that was the interesting. I mean, just really, he said, "Look, the U.S. government has an agreement with El Salvador, for example. One example of why we need to have detentions longer than 72-hour period." And the agreement, which I would love to get in there and change, is that if somebody from El Salvador is apprehended in Utah, they need to remain in that jurisdiction in which they've been apprehended for 7 days. 7 days. And we only have areas right now that will hold people for 72 hours. So he told me after the 72-hour hold, like, we know they're gang members. They may not have committed a crime here yet. We would normally, in other states where we've got cooperation, we would detain them long term. Here we need to let them back out in the general population. Sometimes we'll slap an ankle. Sometimes we'll slap an ankle bracelet on them, and we hope that we can still track them.
So they catch someone who could be an MS-13 gang member. They want to hold them. They need a place to hold them and keep them until they can get them through the court process and get them deported. And in Utah, it seems like it's the sheriffs that are saying, no, we're not going to hold them, and it's being forced for. Is it what percentage are being released?
Well, it says in his memo about 2/3 of arrests, ICE arrests.
Yeah, read that to us. What do you got?
So this was the memorandum, May 31st, 2023, from Michael Bernanke, the field office director that you were talking about. So it says in fiscal year 23, so from October 1st of 22 to April 30th of 23, Salt Lake City field office arrested 4,216 foreign nationals, of which only 33%, or 1,396, were detained by ICE. And 67% were released from ICE custody. 67%.
67%. That's in your backyard.
Yeah, and then non-detention policies stemming from local sheriff's office directly resulted in this exceptional number of foreign nationals being released back into the community to reside alongside Utah residents. And one of the things that we were talking about is that the thing that bothers me is that with what Trent has done with some of these endorsements, he's picked up the FOP. And there were some people that I'll let you speak on, Trent, that kind of came out and attacked you, some high-ranking members, I guess, in our societal nature here in Utah, that said, hey, Trent, these are, you've come out and attacked the sheriff's office or things like that. So speak on that and why this is important for us to understand, because the layman, we don't understand what it is, and all we're doing is taking now an excerpt from what somebody else posted, and the media is blowing that up. So let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it was rather unfortunate. And I saw the Sheriff's Association come out with a statement, and it was very personal.
Why?
That
was so weird.
That's a great question for them. I think their lobbyist really got them spun up. My statement clearly didn't mention the sheriffs. In fact, the only people I called out were state elected officials like Governor Cox and Adams and Wilson, and said, please do something and support the sheriffs. Do they need more money? Do they need, screening against lawsuits and those sorts of things? And so there were ways in which the state can help out. And, to be called out in that way was just really, really shocking to me. What ended up happening, to answer your question about after that, so my statement came out Thursday, Friday, the very next day, state leaders met with this field office director for ICE. And they said, we can't have this designation. He ended up rescinding it on Friday, October 6th. He issued another memo that says, we're going to rescind that. That was outdated. He just met with me on Tuesday before. It wasn't outdated then. He was stressing the seriousness of it. He asked me for help. He wanted me to introduce him to other mayors and talk about this issue there so that more local authorities could be made aware of it. But suddenly, between Thursday when I issued the statement, Friday, it became outdated. I'm told that a deal was made, and if you read that memo, it looks like that. So the state has actually stepped up now. They're willing to
because you called them out.
We did
and then not only they go and say, okay, now we better fix this because we've been caught. Then they turn around and try to throw you under the bus, saying, how dare you use an outdated memo?
Yeah. One day, it was outdated for I guess the 5 minutes that they had the meeting, and made a decision to change the end of it.
You know what I find interesting about the timeline here too is you find all this out on what day was it?
I found out on Tuesday, October 3rd, issued my statement on Thursday the 5th.
And Friday night, what's happening in Israel?
Yeah.
Friday night, we find out that Hamas has been sneaking through the border into Israel. Plants have been sneaking across or being allowed into Israel. And Saturday morning, you have a bunch of people who've crossed the border, plants who release havoc and absolutely do unthinkable things in Israel to the that is horrific to describe what's happening there. And then to realize that right now in Utah, the state that should be redder than red, we are a sanctuary state. We are allowing, and not only allowing these people in here, but then we are releasing 67% of the people ICE captures, including right out of their own words, people who could potentially be MS-13 gang members. Yeah. We're releasing them back onto the streets. Are we not setting ourselves up for exactly what Israel dealt with?
Trojan horse. Mayor, leading into what Jason's talking about, the simple fact that we have these military-age fighting men. I've seen all kinds of reports and reporters down there at the border talking to all these border agents, bringing people across. These aren't Spanish guys. They're coming from Syria. They're coming from Senegal. They're coming from all over East Africa. And a lot of them have said, and then they say, where are you going? Mm-hmm. Florida, Texas, Utah. A lot of them said Utah. And so we've got all these people now.
You?
Dominicano.
¿A dónde vas?
Georgia.
Gracias. ¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde vas?
Nueva Jersey.
¿Y usted?
Utah.
¿A dónde?
De Utah.
¿De dónde?
¿De dónde? De Ecuador.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde?
Utah.
Gracias. ¿Y usted?
Ecuador.
¿A dónde?
Utah.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador, Nueva York.
¿Y usted?
Ecuador. Nueva Jersey.
¿Y usted?
De Ecuador a Texas.
¿Y usted?
Cubano.
¿A dónde? ¿A qué estado?
Boom. All of a sudden, all these people coming across the border saying they're coming to Utah.
Well, it's, again, Utah has an easy policy like California does and others. And that's why, and this is a state that they're not looking at, no one's looking into. And again, the corruption in Utah runs deep.
And that was part of the conversation I had with the ICE field director. He said that very thing. He said that the intel they've got on the ground and is that Utah, go to Utah. They're very friendly, and it's because they're not going to deport you. They don't have any policies in place that are cooperating with ICE for these long-term detentions, and so go to Utah.
So you're telling me these middle-aged men these military-aged men are being told, go to Utah, they will not deport you.
Yeah,
that's what he told you?
He told me, and I'm not sure on the age of the people, but just in all of the kind of what countries of origin. We know that we've had well over 100 people come across the border from
there's people from
100
China.
different countries. But yes, that was generally the statement is go to Utah. It's a great place, and the risk of deportation is very low.
If the field director is bringing that up to you in a conversation and is talking about this in a memo, mm-hmm. Isn't that a much bigger issue than I think that we think it is? I mean, this is probably large. And that, like Jason said, what happened in Israel or what's happening in Israel, yeah. These men were across the border doing who knows what at the time, setting up operations. And the United States is primed for something like this because we have such a lack of, honestly, accountability, caring, and really it's complacency. And people they're funding this. Who is funding this stuff to allow these things and these types of people, these men mostly, not a lot of women and children, that at least that they're showing, that I'm seeing down on the border that are coming in. Yeah. Does that not frighten every American?
It does. I mean, I don't know all the statistics, but I think you're right. I mean, anecdotally, when you look at the video, for example, and you see that, it's troubling. It's troubling. And the fact that we've got folks that want to put their head in the sand.
And that we have a governor who is saying, hey, doors are open. We're a welcoming state.
Yeah.
I mean, look, here's what I'd say to our viewers. This is your state. It's not the governor's state. When did you give your representatives permission to make Utah a sanctuary state to all these men who are crossing the border? And it is. You look at the film. It is men, military-aged men crossing the border.
And it's not like we don't have the ability. No. Doing what you did, coming out with that memo, the letter, this started a frenzy amongst the elites, the ones in power, if you will, because there's a policy that's in place. They're not even following their own policy. So at what point are they complicit? How do we get around that? Where do we go with this?
Yeah, I mean, that was highlighted too in the meeting. I mean, Utah passed a law back in 2011 that talks about immigration, and it requires local authorities to work with ICE. And so we think a lot of these policies that don't make the detention beds available is a violation of state law and federal law. So we need to be enforcing our laws. We have to.
How do you enforce that, Trent?
You elect the right people. You elect the right people that have all sworn an oath. We've all sworn an oath that have been elected in office. I have as a mayor. And that was another thing that weighed on my mind before releasing this statement, because I couldn't get anybody. I did make some calls. I reached out in that 48-hour period. Have you heard about this? It was to various people. I don't want to out anybody, but yeah, we know about this. And this is what he said. The governor said, is that what happened? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we need to, I swore an oath. Getting back to that, there was another thing that weighed on my mind, to obey, support, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Utah. Every elected officer in the state has made that oath.
As a mayor, what authority do you have with your city and your police department with this type of an issue?
Yeah, well, as the mayor, I am the chief executive officer, but also the chief law enforcement officer for Riverton. So I hire a police chief, I appoint one, my council confirms that appointment and really helps oversee that all the laws are enforced in our community. And so when our police department identifies those that are committing crimes that are not here legally, they go and work with county jails and with ICE to follow a process that isn't ultimately right now many folks aren't being detained.
So it's not the cities that are the problem right now. It looks like it's enforcement at a different level entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's to a large degree his beef was with the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
And I know you didn't want to call it the sheriff's, and you didn't call it the sheriff's.
No.
Am I reading that right, though?
That's what the memo says.
And I did make some calls, to folks that understood the issue, and even the ICE director indicated it's very onerous to work with ICE. And so I get that, and that's why I made the appeal to the state, a layer up, if you will, to say, hey, help them out. Don't put all the onus, don't put all the burden on the county sheriffs and the county jails. Do they need additional funding? I mean, we just had $1 billion surpluses here in this state. Let's help them out. Let's do what we can.
So you're running against Brad Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Brad Wilson on all this? I mean, because he's the Speaker of the House. I mean, he obviously knows what's going on here.
Yeah, and has been since 2019. So I think he's well aware of the issue. I think that's part of the problem, why I was called out and I was attacked, why they reverse course so much. They know that this can't stand. I think many people are culpable.
See, this stuff stands when nobody knows,
Mm-hmm.
when it stays out of the public's eye. This is where I have a problem. And you mentioned earlier, what kind of Republican were you saying we got a problem with?
We have a problem in this state and in this country in electing what I call counterfeit conservatives.
I love that. I hadn't heard that term, and you brought that up earlier today. And I think that's what Utah, I think it's a great term for a lot of our politicians in Utah, and I'll call them that, because, and this is why I really am supportive of you running and really would want and am willing to fight to get you in office. We need, because every single one of our federal reps knew about this. Not one single person decided to bring it to the public. And last time we met, the first time we had you on the show, there's actually the three of us together. And one of the things, Tom, you said that struck out to me is, you said we need what? A watchman
on the
Watchman
tower.
on the tower.
That is exactly
Back in D.C.
Is that not exactly what? Why could?
Because what else can you do for the state?
Look, you've done that. How many people knew about this? Cox, Brad Wilson. We can go down the list. Every one of our federal reps. Not one of them was willing to bring it to public attention, because did you not get called out after doing it?
Yeah, I did.
Good.
And I don't know about the federal reps. I think some of them were trying to work on the laws that Congress has enacted that make
But they
it so
knew about
onerous that ICE to
I'll
work
call
with
them
these
out.
jails. But
They clearly, he says right here, they knew, and they may have tried to work directly with sheriffs, but nothing. But when they know this is still happening, where was their courage? And maybe it's because they don't want to upset the establishment apple cart.
Yeah, and that's the question. Yeah, why is it that you have to do this? Someone that's, a mayor in the city here of Riverton. Why do you have to call this out when there are others that have a different platform that can be a higher watchman? Why is it that Trent Stags has to have that?
And then why is so-called conservatives calling you out? Like, I don't understand. Why did Greg Hughes call you out?
Well, that's a great question for Greg Hughes. I think, Greg Hughes is the lobbyist for the Sheriff's Association. Greg Hughes was talked to, I know directly, by somebody who explained again the statement. It didn't call out the sheriffs because Greg had called this person and said, yeah, I'm going to make a statement. We're going to lay it all on the line. And he said, why would you do that? Nothing's been called out. So why he felt the need to go ahead and get this association really agitated about this issue, I don't know. But
I think, it just reminds me of it's one big club. And Utah is such a big political club. And they all protect their own. And again, my hat's off to you for having the courage to stand up, because I'm telling you, I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for someone. This is why people elected President Trump. Why people like Ron DeSantis. They're tired of the status quo. They're tired of people who are trying to just protect their backs, protect the backs of all the other establishment players. We like Trump because Trump came out, and he came out to stand up to the establishment. And obviously they've just tried to destroy him over it. And I think we have so many of these counterfeit conservatives that are more concerned with staying in power and having the support of the big club than standing for truth.
I agree. Trent, I think it's very telling what you're doing here, and you can do all the same things that Trump is doing without the mean tweet. Okay,
much more polished.
I could use a few of those, but
We need more.
Polished, and he understands the issues, the way that he can articulate things and bring the attention to items that are very, very important in our everyday living. I mean, guys, this is something that's building and building, and this is eventually those chickens are going to come home to roost. We're all going to have a problem if somebody doesn't stand up and say, hey, where's the Paul Revere?
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that, and the support, both of you. It's huge, and you're using your platform here to make people aware of it, that we have to. We've got to rally around true conservatives, folks that are going to stand up. That's what this election is about. To me, this election for the Senate seat is about who has the courage to finally go back there and stand up against the club, stand up against the establishment, and finally work for the American people. Because the ruling elite thing, this isn't working. We're $33 trillion in debt. We've got hundreds of federal agencies making 100,000 pages of rules every year that we all have to live under, that they're not accountable to. It's just, it's horrible. We need, we just need a huge change, and the only way we're going to get it is with folks that actually have the courage, that have demonstrated the ability to stand up to the establishment.
Trent, I'm going to correct you on one point there. It's working for them. It's not working for the people.
Yeah,
and that's
not working
that's who our elected officials work for, is the people. It's actually working for them, because that's what they're trying to do, is separate this into the have and have-nots.
Yeah.
And
or it feels like the elite versus the regular people.
Correct.
Yeah.
But great point.
So tell us about, because one of the things, it seems like you're doing a very great job with endorsements. What's going on there? What kind of support are you getting out there?
Yeah, I think, as we talked about earlier, came out and announced late May. It was the only one that had the courage to take on Mitt Romney directly. Everybody else that's come into the race subsequently has done so after Romney decided he wasn't, announced he's not seeking re-election. So that courage is contagious. That courage and boldness has been rewarded, I think, in the endorsements we've garnered. And so nationally, we've had Mark Levin, Charlie Kirk, Harmeet Dillon, Carrie Lake. She came out here just a few weeks ago to do an event.
That sounds like it was amazing.
We also have Ambassador Rick Grinnell. Also, he was the Director of National Intelligence as well under Trump, and then his deputy assistant, and also someone who was the Chief of Staff for the Department of Defense under Trump, Kash Patel, has also endorsed. So we continue to get great, solid America First and great, conservatives that have endorsed our candidacy. They recognize that I am the conservative and that folks should rally around our candidacy here in the state of Utah if they finally want somebody in office that's going to work for them.
How about mayors in the state of Utah? How are you doing on those guys?
We're doing well. We've been campaigning going across the state these 4 months. We picked up dozens and dozens of endorsements from mayors, from county commissioners, from city council members. I think they really recognize that, oh, wow, here's somebody from the state of Utah, from elementary school to graduate school. I've attended Utah schools. I've raised my family here. I've operated businesses here, helped take a company public, listed on NASDAQ last year. And then being in elected office 10 years, they love the fact that I'm a mayor, that I'm from here. I understand the issues. I understand federalism. I understand that proper role of government, and I've demonstrated that in the time I've been in office. And so that's what they want. They know they're going to be well represented. That's resonating as we're going across the state. And, I was just up in northern Utah the last 2 days and picked up another half a dozen endorsements or so. So it just keeps gaining steam.
I've got an important point to make here on the normal people in the state of Utah versus the elites. Okay, and let's just say that's 99% of them. Okay, I think 99% of the people here in Utah want somebody like a Trent Stags, a Mayor Trent Stags, to do this. And then you've got the elites that hold so much power. Okay, you got this 1% that says this is everything, this is everybody. They've got the money, they've got the machine, they've got all these things behind them, and they're going to say and do whatever it takes, as we can see in these other letters that were coming out against Trent, to try to take him down and derail his campaign when it was actually false what was said about him. And I mean, this is very true now. But the point is that you're traveling the state and seeing these guys. What type of pushback are you seeing saying, hey, we want to Mitt Romney?
Yeah, I'm seeing next to nobody say that. And that's where it didn't come as a surprise to me when Mitt actually said, I'm not seeking re-election. Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation with others. It's like, wow, we knew. I mean, just polling data, he was maybe in the 30% range in terms of Republican voters. And just anecdotally, as we travel the state, hardly anyone we've talked to said, yeah, we want Mitt in there or we want somebody like Mitt.
Well, that's my point to the voter that's looking at this and is going to be deciding and thinking about these things with what Trent stands for is, why are we going to listen to some of these guys that have this power behind them? You need to really pay attention to your candidates when you vote.
One thing I'd, because this is really, and Trevor Loudon really talked about this, that this is really on a global level turning into the elites versus the regular people. And Utah has a group of elites, and they can be found in Envision Utah. We've done shows on Envision Utah. They are the ones who are behind pushing regionalism, which is really where a lot of the smart city stuff comes from. Anybody, and I'd encourage you to go and look at the board. You can go to the Envision Utah. They have a website, and go look at the board. And one of the names you're going to see right there at the top of the board, along with several of these governors, Cox is involved with that, is Brad Wilson, Speaker of the House. I mean, you don't get more entrenched in Utah's establishment than Brad Wilson. And I just hope people can see who he is, because you've got these so-called conservatives trying to push, promote him. And it's like, how can you be calling this guy a conservative? I mean, just look at who he is. I mean, this guy is not a conservative. He is Mitt 2.0. And I'll tell you, I'm actually more concerned about him than Mitt. Do you know why? Because Mitt, you know what you've got. Mitt is no longer a wolf in sheep's clothing. People know who Mitt is, and they're watching him. They want him out there. They're trying. They will shut him down. But the problem is, you get someone who goes in there under the false pretense of being a conservative. Brad Wilson pretends to be a conservative, and then all of a sudden people trust him, and those are the ones that can do the most damage. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing that I'm the most afraid of.
Well, and he could be in there for 30 years, given his age. So he gets in there, like you said, as a conservative and trying to paint himself that way. And I agree with your assessment. I mean, he embodies the establishment. He's the Speaker of the House. I mean, go look at his donors. It's the who's who of, it's all the lobbyists, it's all the establishment players. And if you look at his voting record too, it's very weak with respect to conservatism. I mean, it's in the last year he's made a pivot because he knew he was running for this office. But back in 2019, he's in leadership. He was the Speaker of the House then. And he's the one that passed the increase on sales tax. He's pushed through a lot of other fee increases and taxes. He's trying to claim that he's cut taxes by $850 million, the income tax. But if you take into account the increase in motor vehicle registrations, the state levy portion of property tax for education that it increased, I mean, net, you're maybe a wash. And the thing that he did in his tenure too, in his first year in leadership, the state budget was $16 billion. This past year, it's now $30 billion.
Saw that the other day.
It's doubled.
Let me point out.
Yeah, what do you got?
Why it's important with him being involved with Envision. So Envision they're a group. Obviously, you've done shows on them. They're a group that's involved with how this state puts together communities and transportation studies and all types of things and then developers listen to what happens. The state listens to it. Money's funded through this. I mean, that's just in a nutshell. But if Brad is involved, Brad was a home builder and ran a company, and same thing. You've got all these developers.
Conflict of interest.
There's complete conflicts of interest, and you know that, and smart guy, and he knows how to work that system. And so that's why I think it's super important. If he's sitting on this board in a vision, there's a question as to why. And if he has so much power up there, as speaker, and then he gets in in the Senate, guys, we've got problems. I mean, this is a deep entrenched individual.
He's got a fundraiser going on tonight. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Do either of you guys have a link to that? Because you got to look at the people who he has listed on it. Like when someone sent that to me, I started reading through, and it was like I knew every single name,
it's
and
a who's
not
who of
in
the
a good.
establishment.
It was the exact who's who of the establishment. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me?
Well, you've got
like
the
when
Millers,
you have the shows.
Scott Anderson.
I mean, it is. I mean, Cox. I mean, I honestly want to find it because when someone sent it to me, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because it is literally all the who's who's. When Chelsea Hope comes on and does these shows of Envision Utah and all the players who are on every single board, like Utah's deep state, it was like every single name I knew. And there was a couple on there that I think, all right, I think maybe they're not. Maybe they're just just got money and they're there to support them. I don't know that they're really, corrupt, but. All the who's that we know are like bad players are all behind him. So it's like, oh my gosh, if they're all trying to get him in, he's bad.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's the establishment in this race. We're really the outsider, the proven conservative fighter. And that's what we need more than ever. Yeah. And so that's where we need people's help.
Yeah. Well, Tom, what are your closing thoughts here?
Well, I think it's been interesting just to take to light some of these things that we're learning, and we shouldn't be necessarily learning these at the 11th hour when, guys, we're being invaded. Luckily we're not one of the border states, but we are a sanctuary state, and that's actually been very troubling for me to learn even in the past. Like, I've known this for a while. As a contractor, I see a lot of things. I see a lot of people that are here illegally. A lot of those people are good people, but what's happening, guys, is they're bringing people across this border that are here for nefarious reasons. And that's the thing that concerns me. It's not the people that are here to work and make a living and feed a family. It's those guys that are here to be a Trojan horse to who knows what is going to happen. And so, just super grateful that we've got somebody like Mayor Staggs out here that's sounding the alarm and standing up on that watchtower. So thank you for that.
Amen. Your closing thoughts?
And I would agree with that. I mean, there are a lot of great people that come here to work, and we're a nation built on immigrants, right? My ancestors came from Italy and Western Europe. So I'm all for having a process. We've got an immigration policy. We need to enforce it. We need to do it. But those aren't the people, those people here just to work, those aren't the people that ICE is wanting to detain that's mentioned in that memo, those 4,000 plus. These are people that they think have serious issues and that are here that could potentially do harm for our citizens. And so as a state, absolutely need to step up. The state has to be the backstop to a failed federal government here with respect to immigration. And that's one thing that I want to immediately get back there and address.
Well, I'm thankful for you. I really appreciate you shining the light on this. It was a huge issue to me before the attack of Hamas into Israel, because we've seen it. We have seen it. We've seen these people crossing the border, and we've been known that this is not good. This is not good. Cannot be good to have these open borders. And then you see what Hamas did, and then to find out that from this report that Utah is left of ICE. And that ICE, right from their own report, said the states that have similar sanctuary policies to Utah are California, New Jersey, Illinois, New Jersey, and New York, and Colorado. That they line us up with those blue states. And a governor who says, well, let's all just disagree better and let's all just let it happen. And there are consequences to actions. There will be consequences to this. Utah, we keep talking about how it's one of the most corrupt states in the country. And here again, it raises its head. So to our listeners, we've got to support people like Trent. We cannot I will tell you their strategy. They will prompt people to run against him, conservatives, to split our vote, so that it is a bunch of conservatives and then one big money player, Brad Wilson, who they get in. We cannot allow them to divide us. And with this, as far as the sanctuary state, call the governor, call your reps, call your sheriffs, tell them to support ICE. Tell them to stand up and support our borders, releasing 67% of the people ICE are catching right back into our state. ICE has been screaming forever for attention, for someone to, and finally they have one person willing to stand up. So,
and that's one thing I do want to say again. I've been called out that I'm supporting the Biden administration because I want to enforce immigration law and actually not be left of ICE. Are you kidding me? This is a complete failure of the Biden administration. They've been horrible, and I've been calling that out from day one, the first day I announced my candidacy. We have not been shy to call out Biden on this. It's been horrible. But again, we cannot put our head in the sands. We have to be the backstop. If the federal government has completely failed us as they have, then we've got to do something. And that's something the states recognize that. And that's the outcome of the meeting Friday that they just had, where that designation was rescinded and the memo from May was outdated, it said.
Because of you.
Because they made a deal. They've done something to finally address this issue. And so in that respect, I'm glad that we rang the alarm, that we stood there on the tower, let people know about this so we can actually effectuate change.
Well, they've been giving you hell for it, and they will continue to. And so, those of you who are tired of the Utah establishment and tired of the establishment general, let's get behind Trent. Tom, you're a freaking rock star. Thank you for being on today. And folks, thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. We've been getting a lot of great support, and it's because of you guys. And this is the cool thing. Here's the way we win. Not politicians, not establishment, not presidents, regular people like the three of us just standing up despite our weaknesses and just getting in the fight and doing what we can. And that's what each of you can do. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to win. And it only comes down to what our role is going to be in that fight. So God bless you all. God bless Utah. Let's freaking go.